I think I know everyone on here. If I don't, sorry. Um, my name's Sarah, and today I am sharing my experience through therapeutic horseback riding. The logo you see on the left-hand side is my therapeutic riding center that I used to ride at, and sooner or later you'll meet the horse that I used to ride. Sorry, this is very wordy, so I will do my best on, if people have questions, you can ask at the end. How therapeutic riding has impacted my life. I have been riding horses ever since I was young, and I struggled to walk and communicate. And from a very young age, I did therapies from occupational, physical, speech, and wore small leg braces to walk. And then I used simple sign language to communicate. And one of the forms of therapy that I did when I was younger, every Friday, I would go and do horseback riding. And that was my favorite thing that I got to do. And it has impacted my life in words that I cannot express. And it's all because of a connection between a relationship and a connection between a horse named, I call him my special buddy because he is, named Harry. How popular and known as therapeutic horseback riding? Therapeutic horseback riding can be found in basically all states and countries. It costs about $50 per session, $50 to $100 per session, depending on the therapy being provided. But what's difficult and what makes it not as known as a lot of insurance companies don't cover it because it's considered what do you call it? A sport, like not necessarily a sport. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but it's considered to be an extracurriculum or whatever sporty thing, and so a lot of insurance don't cover it. But most of them are all nonprofits and rely heavily on their volunteers and staff members to run their centers. There we go. Two forms that people usually you'll hear. One is hippotherapy, and the other one is therapeutic horseback riding. Hippotherapy is basically where you take young riders who are not either old enough or big enough to ride, and they basically just learn what do they learn? They basically learn how to ride on like fake horses, and they learn different body parts and stuff like that. And it's just a way for them to, I guess, I wouldn't necessarily get acclimated, but to get used to being around horses and whatever. And these are usually individuals with certain disabilities, and where therapeutic riding is you're actually riding the horse, and individuals like myself that struggle with a variety of stuff, a lot of stuff, muscle tone, posture alignments, and just the way my lower extremities basically work. It makes a difference in their lives. The key thing that I like to share about therapeutic riding is the fact that, which is a fun fact, a lot of people don't know this, but people who have spent most of their whole entire lives either using leg braces, walking, crutches, walkers, wheelchairs, will eventually learn how to either walk with less assistance or without assistance, because the walking gait of a horse mimics the way that a human the way that we walk. And so over time, their muscles and their body will gain the strength to eventually not do whatever they want to do, but to make some of those movements easier for them. PATH International, it stands for Professional Association of Therapeutic Horsemanship, which is basically an organization that all therapeutic riding centers have to be certified under. So from their staff members to their horses have to but they basically have to be certified under PATHs. So how do therapeutic riding centers choose their horses? When therapeutic riding centers choose their horses, they look for certain horses. They must have calm demeanors. They must be patient, compassionate, and kind. They have to have a smooth and sound walking gait and be able to stand still without jerky movements, and are able to adapt to different environments. The horses must respond well to all individuals with disabilities, regardless of how they respond, move, and communicate. The horses must be able to pick up nonverbal cues and different movements by the riders, because not all riders can communicate or have the ability to talk verbally, and a lot of riders just use nonverbal cues. And then which I've already mentioned this, but all horses must be trained through PATHs and undergo a 90-day trial of being with the therapeutic riding center. And then they decide if the horse that they're trying out is the right fit for their clients and their program. Who can ride? Therapeutic riding, hippotherapy and therapeutic riding. Basically, who can ride is basically people with a variety of different disabilities and ages. Some individuals might be visual impaired, hearing impaired, have scoliosis, spina bifida, cerebral palsy, quadriplegic, paraplegic, autism spectrum, Down syndrome, intellectual disability, developmental disability, and learning disability, and challenges riders may have. The way they move, muscle tone, posture alignment, movement patterns, weak posture and core muscles, no strength in their neck or head or whatever, like traumatic brain injury or stroke. Mobilization, that basically just means people that are basically use something to walk or whatever and don't have the great movement of their hips and lower extremities. People's digestive system, how people breathe, spatial awareness, sensory integration, I think I pronounced that word right, attention and language processing. And that is Mr. Harry. Harry is what you call a flea-bitten gray. That's his coat, which basically means he's a white-based coat with a lot of thousands of brown specks on him. From a distance, it looks like there's a lot of fleas or flies on him. So that's where he gets his name of his coat. But he is about 15, he's around 15 years old. He could be older. But he 15 hands, so he's like twice as big as I am. And he is the most sweetest guy that I have ever come across. And he has arthritis, and he has tendonitis in his joints and his tendons, and so moving for him is not one of his favorite things to do. But doing it, he has to because he will get stiff just like a dog will. There we go. How do people get on the horse? Some people, question how do people with a variety of different disabilities end up getting on a horse, and there's 3 ways. So you can get on from a mounting block, from an arena, and then you can get on from a mounting ramp. It's just a ramp that makes it easy for like people that are in wheelchairs or walkers or whatever crutches can use to be level with the horse and make mounting easier. And then for people who are completely in wheelchairs and staff members who don't feel like having to transfer them from a wheelchair to the horse, there's what you call a Hoover transfer lift, which is basically a lift that can lift them up out of their wheelchair onto the horse. That makes just the transfer is easier on and off, easier for everyone. How do therapeutic riding centers make riding lessons possible for individuals? So usually how people divide riders into riding lessons is depending on their abilities. So people that don't have that much independence will be kind of put with other people who don't have that much independence. Then you have semi-independent, which means people who, have the ability to be independent but need either direction or support or whatever. And then independent riding, which is just basically riders that are able to ride without assistance or people with them. In therapeutic riding, they rely heavily on volunteers, and the reason why is because usually, depending on people's abilities, they have riders that either need 1 to 3 sidewalkers, and those people basically provide supports while they ride. And those are from different, just depending on their strength within. So, I mean, they can support them by providing a shoulder hold, which is basically where someone sits in the saddle with them and has someone, I don't know how that red thing got on there. Sorry, that was not by me. Right, support, so shoulder hold, and then there's thigh hold, knee hold, calf hold, and ankle hold, and then people who don't require a hold at all. When I started riding, I didn't use any holds at all, but now that my mobility has changed, if I get back into it, then that will be determined. I don't know, I don't necessarily know that what that would look like, but that will be something that I will hopefully learn. We'll figure out soon. How are lessons individualized towards the rider's needs and abilities? In lessons, the teachers and volunteers help the individuals and assist them with the different tasks, from grooming to tacking to riding and mounting and dismounting. The connection between humans and horses is a magical and breathtaking experience for just about everyone, from parents to the people that are doing it. When a horse is able to communicate with someone who is young or older on the level that we as humans have a difficult time connecting, it's breathtaking, because a lot of people think that that's not possible, and it is. Horses have a way of connecting, just like dogs or any animal, but horses in particular have a way of connecting with individuals that not a lot of people can. And a lot of therapeutic riding centers, they're motto is they focus on the individual's abilities rather than their disabilities, because they believe anyone's capable of writing if they want to. How does therapeutic writing activities help individuals through their daily lives? I don't have any words, so this is where I will talk. So when I was younger, I did independent writing. I did not require any support, and I was able to ride without anyone helping me. All I had was someone just leading the horse, so the horse got out of control, but that was about it. I came to Sire when I was a junior in high school, so I had written for 2 years. And I started writing Harry, and he and I have this connection that is nearly undescribable. It's literally undescribable. I At the time, I wasn't wearing leg braces. I wasn't wearing anything besides a shoe lift to help with my scoliosis, but that was about it. And now that I am in leg braces and don't live with that, well, not live with, but I don't do anything now without them. It basically, I mean, if I were to get back into writing, I guess I'll say why I stopped writing. Why I stopped writing when I stopped writing right when I graduated high school, and that was because I had moved from Houston to Birmingham, Alabama for 3 years. And so I was away from writing, and I haven't been into writing probably for the past six years. And it's something that I miss. It's something that provided a lot of different things for me. It was more emotional than it was anything, but it helped with everything mobility-wise. And I believe since I stopped writing, that's probably one of the key things that I don't want to say that's led to me using what I wear now, braces and stuff like that. But I do believe it has impacted my life, because even if I'm not writing, because I miss it. It's something that I enjoyed and loved. And my writing instructor made a promise to me that every single time that I was home, either for holidays or whatever, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, or whatever, and if I were to email or text her, she would allow me to come up to the center and my writing center and visit him. And one of my favorite stories, and he still does this every single time I see him, whether it's out in the pasture or it's in a stall, I would walk out and I would be like probably maybe not even 5 feet away from him, and he would be the farthest away, and I would stand and yell his name. I would say, Harry, and he would turn his head around. I mean, his body wouldn't even be facing me, but he would turn his body around and he would look at me, and he would walk up, and then he would just stand right in front of me, and it would be like, where have you been? I missed you. And he still does that every single time. And one of my recent stories, I will say, which I guess I'll get into that later, but was taken at the rodeo of this year. That's not the story I was going to say, but another story is, which I have a photo of, it's at the end of it, but story is, there's a horse show called Top Hands, TOPHANDS, and it's put on by the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. And it's where all the therapeutic riding centers of Houston come together, and they have the opportunity to have their riders show what they can do. And there's events from English to Western riding, trail, showmanship, and straight 8 barrels. And so there's just a whole bunch of activities, and they all ride, and they compete for things, but they compete for they all try to compete and try to win the first place prize, which is an engraved belt buckle. And all the other places are either trophies or ribbons. But my story is for the past, I think it's been the past 2 years, 2 to 3 years, 3 years. Sorry, what am I saying? Apologize. 3 years, I have had the opportunity to, every single time Top Hands comes around, which is the 22nd of February. It's a 2-day competition. And I have the opportunity to go up to NRG and get to go and see him and visit my writing center. And there's a place where people can get their photo taken of with their horse. And that photo's like at the end of it, so you'll see that. But it's that was an experience that I love, because it's an opportunity where I get to have a little time with him and walk him from his stall that he's staying at and to the place where they take the photos. And this year, and I was wearing leg braces and wearing one that really didn't have much support at all, my right leg would completely collapse inwards every single time I walked. And so he noticed that, and he used his shoulder and his neck, well, his shoulder and his head, as a walking crutch for me to walk and make that easier. And he adapted himself towards me, towards my needs, without someone even asking him to. And so that is how special he is, because not every horse can do that. And there's Top Hands. So just different photos. This is Trail, so I guess I'll talk a little bit about this. These two photos were taken in 2014. And Trail is it's just basically an obstacle course laid out on the ground of the floor of an arena. And I ended up winning second place in this, which I was very proud of myself for, because I had worked earlier on riding him without a bit in his mouth. And so basically it was just reins connected to his bridle without a mouthpiece. And that was very difficult, because it forced me to use my leg muscles to be able to communicate with him, and it paid off. And so that was very exciting, because I had taken probably like 6 individual writing lessons just to try to work on doing it. And it was very exciting to see that I got second place. But that's a photo of me on him, and then that's a photo of me in the arena. You guys can see that. That's a little farther out, so sorry people can't necessarily see it, but there's that. Benefits of therapeutic horseback riding. It improves motor skills. It improves the way people can walk. Enhances balance and posture. Just helps with breathing in general. Builds self-esteem and self-confidence, which is a huge thing that it's done for me. Develop meaningful relationships just with volunteers, just by talking to them. And then you obviously develop a meaningful relationship and connection with the horse that you ride. Increases ability to follow directions, increases or improves memory and communication skills, and developing the way you think and the way you talk, and how things form in your head. And these are just, at the end of it, there's just quotes, which I'll read. I saw a child who could not walk, sit on a horse, laugh, and talk. I saw a child who could only crawl, mount a horse, and sit up tall. I saw a child born in strife, take up and hold the reins of life. And that same child was heard to say, "Thank you, God, for showing me the way," which is just an example of how therapeutic writing can change individuals' lives when writers themselves realize that, hey, I can ride a horse. When in my daily life or others, they get out of their limitations from either their braces or their walker or their crutches or whatever, and they have no limitations. It's complete freedom and independence. This is another one. When I am with horses, I am a better version of myself. I am not worthless, and there's nothing wrong with me. I am not shy. I am not weak. I am not empty. When I am writing, no matter how many times I might fall, I have no scars. I am not broken. I am safe, and I am myself. Horses are my life, and the rest are just details. Which basically just means, confidence. A horse can build someone's confidence, just the ability to ride, but the rest are horses can be people's lives and are a part of people's lives, like they have been mine for the longest time. And everything else doesn't really matter, regardless of their disability doesn't matter. Some people view that and some people don't. This is probably one of my favorites. When you cannot walk, let me help you to run. When you are afraid, let me teach you to trust. When you feel weak, let me help you build your strength. When you can't find your voice, let us speak without words. When you cannot reach, let me raise you above the world. When you want to give up, let me show you how far you can go. And then the last one is, nothing compares to therapy a horse can provide, and that is a very true statement. And then my last slide it's basically my journey. My journey of therapeutic writing has been one of my life's major joys and something I take pride in. A lot of people would think, since I haven't written in over 6 years, does my writing journey stop? And it hasn't, because at the same time, I still get to go see him, and I still get to go to events that I used to compete in, and it makes that special. But what also makes it special is I get to continue to share my story and my connection that I have with Harry, and how that impacts my life and how therapeutic writing can impact others. And that is what I have. So if people want to ask questions, I know my slide ended like 10 minutes early, so I apologize for that. But I guess one thing I'll say, and I don't have photos of her in this, but that's not related. It is related. There's a movie by a woman named Amberly Snyder, and she created a movie called Walk, Ride, Rodeo. And it's her biography of her life. And she's a college student. She used to be a college student. And she was in a car accident a couple years ago, driving from her family's ranch in Utah to Colorado. And she's known to being a famous barrel racer. And she was in a car driving on a country highway or freeway, and her car got out of rhythm because she wasn't wearing her seatbelt. And so her car picked up gravel, and she realizes when she wakes up, she realizes she's on the ground laying against a barbed wire fence and can't move her lower legs, and that's when she realized that she was paralyzed. And so it is her story about how she learns how to walk from physical therapy and stuff like that. Not necessarily walk, but get as close as she can get to it, and how she learned how to re-ride and how she got back in the rodeo. And her therapists thought that she asked them, she was laying in her hospital bed and she asked them, she's like, will I be able to ride again? And they're like, you won't. And she was determined to prove them wrong. And her family definitely did that. And one of the things that I say, which doesn't make sense, is what almost killed her, which was not wearing her seatbelt in her car, is actually what ends up saving her, because her family ends up taking a metal seatbelt and strapping that through a Western saddle, the middle part of a Western saddle, so it clips on her her abs and whatever, her stomach. And then they take Velcro straps and strap her thighs on the saddle, and then they take leather straps and strap her lower legs to the saddle, and then they take rubber bands and not necessarily tie, but connect those on top of her boots so her feet don't slip out. And that's how she learned how to ride. And before how she learned how to ride, she was riding out in her pasture, and she was on her horse independently, and she was riding, and she realized she had no control over her lower extremities, so her body necessarily couldn't tell her horse to slow down or whatever, or go faster. And so her horse had to learn to not listen to her body's movements, or squeezing legs or whatever, but to listen to her vocal her vocal cues. And so Walk, Ride, Rodeo is the story of how she learned how to do that. And it's something I highly recommend to people if they are interested in not necessarily learning about therapeutic riding. Her horse is not therapeutic horse, but similar to how a horse can change someone's life in the period of years. So that is what I've got. And if people want to ask questions, they can.
Sarah, is there a facility like this in Houston?
Yeah, there is.
What's it
How
called?
on earth do I expand the Zoom? Because I'm still sharing the screen. Okay, hang on. Sorry, give me a second.
Sure.
I cannot see people. Okay, there's got to be a way that...
Click stop share.
Stop share?
Yep.
There we go. That, okay. Sorry about that.
No.
No, don't be.
So I guess your question was, are there facilities in Houston? There are. Houston probably has the largest amount of therapeutic riding centers out of all states. All states do provide it. But what I always like to say is, to find horses, you have to travel quite a bit of ways. My therapeutic riding center is located out in Spring. Sire has 3 locations. One is in Spring, Fort Bend, and the other one is in, I can think of, Fort Bend, and the other location will pop up in my head and I'll think of it, but I can't think of the other place. But
Are they open with COVID?
Multiple. What?
Are they open with COVID?
So that's a great question. I know my writing center, so I don't think with COVID, I don't think a lot of them are, which is unfortunate, because the writers, I and other people really look forward to doing it, and it is one of their main thing of therapy. I know my writing center is open, but they've had to change basically how everything that they've learned how to do has to be basically completely changed. Usually writing centers would provide boots and helmets and riding gear for people who either don't have the money or who don't have the not necessarily, I wouldn't say necessarily the ability, you don't know where to find it, them, but so a lot of people, a lot of places provide that, but with COVID, they basically, they ask people to, if they want to continue to ride, they have to go out and buy their own equipment. I mean, they'll still provide saddles and bridles and all of that type of stuff, but that's that. But I mean, some of the ways that they've had to adapt, I guess, because of COVID is not necessarily, I mean, taking riders to asking, I mean, and it depends. I mean, if a rider requires more assistance than other individuals, then that would have to be a question for the staff members and for the sidewalkers, whoever they're going to be paired with, to ask them, do you feel comfortable doing this? And some will say yes and some will say no. And it depends on if people want to put themselves in a situation where they're either where the riders can possibly get it or if they can get it. And so it depends. It'll be interesting to see how it ends up, I guess, playing out. But it's unfortunate. I guess I will say that COVID's unfortunate.
Yes, it is. In all aspects of life,
Yeah,
it is.
Sarah, I wanted to ask about, so first, congratulations on second place. That's awesome.
Yes.
And this is really, really interesting. When I was in college, I did horsemanship as my PE because I was in East Tennessee and that was one of the things on offer. So it was a great class and it was English saddle. And anyway, part of our class was grooming and that really helped, or it seemed to help with getting to know the horse and bonding. And I'm wondering if grooming the horse if there's any part of that in therapeutic horseback riding.
There is. Grooming is actually something that it is taught to a lot of riders just because it helps them learn, the horse, just how, not just how the horse reacts to different things. One of the things that therapeutic riding centers always tell riders, two safety things. Horses only see forwards, so their eyes are put on the far side of their head, and so they only see what's in front of them rather than behind them. And so riding centers will usually teach them to walk around the front where a horse can see them rather than walking around the back. If you choose to go around the back, put a hand on where the butt is and tell them you're behind them. So when you're walking around, they know someone's actually behind it. And another thing that
Way not to get kicked.
What? Go ahead. You were going to say
Good way
something.
not to get kicked.
Yeah, and if you don't, you are more prone to be kicked, and a lot of people don't want that because that hurts. Not pleasant. It hasn't happened to me, but it will happen because horses don't know if you're back. They don't know, since they can't see behind them. It's difficult for them to realize, hey, they don't know if a person that's behind them is either going to hurt them or if there's something rather than a human, like an animal, is going to hurt them. And so, it's just a normal, self-defense thing that they teach themselves. Another thing that they teach you is, which some riders have the strength to do this and some don't, but if you're going to clean out a horse's hooves, they always tell you to run your hand along their leg, because their hoof is one of their sensitive parts of their body, because hoof is what do you call it? It's circle, but on the top there's a V in their hoof, so it goes down and then goes up. Even though my hand's not a hoof, but I'm using it as a demonstration. This part you don't want to touch with the sharp part of the hoof pick, because that is where all their nerve endings end, and their feet. And so if you take something that is sharp or is whatever, it's sensitive, and so you don't want to do that, and you hook around, you basically go around it rather than in it. There's also, there's different things people can, there's different little tidbits and stuff that, I guess, not necessarily safety, but, you learn body language and you learn how to look for different signs and stuff like that. So, yes, I do. I don't know if that answered your question, or that should have.
Perfectly. Yes. Thank you.
Sarah, I have a question for you.
Sure.
So much for sharing this with us today. I think it's really helpful for us to learn something more about you, but also this this program, this project. Girl Scouts have some of the same things, just so people have an opportunity to be around horses and learn about it. So thank you.
Welcome.
You told us a little bit about how it helps you and helped you along your way with your journey. I'm seeing so much confidence in you as you keep moving through your journey. Tell me what the confidence of riding a horse can do for you or for someone who is in this program.
So I guess the story that I'll say is some riders don't have the ability to communicate, and so that means their parents can't communicate with them, and therapists don't have the ability to. And so when you put someone who has either no communication or some communication or communication, like a wide variety of communication like I do, I'm very verbal, but from within, like, I guess a certain amount of time between person who has no ability to communicate, somewhat ability to communicate, and then a lot of verbal communication, a lot of times riders who are nonverbal, by being around a horse, they actually learn some of their first words. And that is just because a horse cannot talk to you, but it is someone who they can relate to. It's someone that, you know, it's not that a horse can relate to them, but in a way, they're talking to a thing, an animal that is non-judgmental. It is something that's not going to hurt them, not going to harm them, and they end up feeling safe around it. And so the ability to, like, say whatever, either the name or their name or whatever it is, and people who have the ability to speak, like I do, I have the ability to speak, but it had, I guess, when I was younger, I have my brother and my sister used to do sports, and so that was the thing that they got to do. The thing that I got to do was horseback riding, and it provided a place for me that I could build confidence in my abilities. It provided a place where I could learn, not necessarily learn, but know that regardless of the limitations and the challenges that I have or that I may face throughout the period of my life, horses will always be something that I can go to and say, this is something that has changed me, and it changes for other people's, can change other people's lives. And since I don't ride anymore, I hope either when COVID, no, I wouldn't say necessarily ends, but dies down at least, that I will either be able to get myself back in the riding or become a volunteer, someone who helps out with other riders, and continue that, not necessarily continue it, but to still just have horses be a part of my life, because horses have been out of my life for a couple of years and it's been hard. And so, I mean, it provided a place where I felt safe enough to be able to just think of, like, not to think of, but like to think that my challenges and disabilities don't even, not apply, but aren't, I can forget about it when writing, like a lot of people can. Mm-hmm. So they call therapeutic writing freedom and independence for writers of all abilities, because it is.
It sounds to me like it's even bigger than confidence, that you're describing something that's very transforming for yourself and for others.
That's probably a better word to use, yes.
Wonderful.
Hi, Renee.
Hi. Sarah, one of the things I noticed about you early on is an empathy for people's feelings and ability, even though you're quiet, to read people's feelings and their needs, and then verbalize them. And then, of course, it applies to our dog too, who you've been around. And whenever she's doing something, you kind of key into it in a special way. So I wonder if that probably did come from your relationship with your horse.
I think it started when I rode horses. Harry wasn't the first horse that I rode. I ended up riding at a different riding center called Southern Breeze Equestrian Center, and that's where I learned how to do English. But the first horse that I rode there was named Roscoe. And Roscoe, the first year that I did top hands, so I rode him in English, and I got first place. So the belt buckle you saw, and probably I think it was like the last slide of me and Harry standing, that was the belt that I wore. I mean, the buckle that I won with, not Harry, but with Roscoe. Roscoe passed away about 3 years ago from colic when he was bought from a different family. And so he ended up passing away, but Harry's still around. But yes, my empathy, I guess, the empathy that I have towards others and the ability to be able to relate to people and animals in a way that some riders don't have the ability and some do. On different variety, I wouldn't say variety, but different levels of it. I guess for me, it has come from being so in tune with my own challenges and what I struggle with, and being able to relate to other people, because, people, I mean, even though my challenges may not be the same as somebody else's, they are, I mean, we all can relate in a way to some people in one way or another. And I have always had the ability to relate to people with different disabilities ever since I was young. So that's a talent, and with animals. Those are both two talents that I've had since I was young. So I think that answers your question.
Sarah, Paul and I joined the session late, so I apologize if you already talked about this.
That's okay.
How did you find out about therapeutic riding in the first place? How did you first come to it?
That's a great question. So a lot of therapists, I mean, I did therapies from occupational to physical and speech through the younger years of my life. I don't do it now. I do physical. Physical is the only one that I do. But usually when you do those types of therapies, it's not usually something that a therapist would suggest. They don't say, hey, therapeutic riding is an option. Right. Because I have always loved animals, and I had been riding, I was even riding horses even from a younger age, from when I was younger, not even from Southern Breeze, but it was just something that I loved doing. And I guess when my challenges got to be more, or my daily challenges, and got to be more difficult, I wouldn't say difficult, but ended up not wrapping, but piling up on one thing after another. Therapeutic riding was something that, wasn't necessarily mentioned, but my high school at an auction had offered therapeutic riding at Sire, a day where people can go and experience horseback riding. And I had gone and I had done therapeutic riding at Southern Breeze, but I did a day at Sire and I loved it. And I told Mom, I said, I want to get back into this. And so she booked me lessons, and that's kind of how that started. So I think that answers your question, doesn't it?
Yeah, wonderful. And I don't know whether you said this before, but what breed of horse is Harry?
So Harry is it's what you call flea bitten gray coat, and it's a funny breed because people get confused about it. Basically, his coat is white. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot, like thousands of brown, like small brown specks all around his coat. And from a distance, it looks like flies on him.
He's beautiful. Just beautiful.
Yeah, he's a very handsome. He thinks of himself as being handsome, and he is.
Well, thank you, Sarah, for stepping up and offering this as an idea. I don't think any of us ever thought we'd have a Sunday school session on therapeutic horseback riding.